There's a specific point in your financial life where working one more year doesn't actually make you richer. It makes you poorer. And the people most likely to sail right past that point are the ones who are the best at what they do. The highest earners, the executives, the business owners, because they're most afraid to let that income go. So they keep working, telling themselves it's a safe move, when the math has quietly flipped on them. And nobody tells them this. There's no alarm that goes off the day you cross the line from I need this paycheck to this paycheck is now costing me more money. So today I'm going to show you 3 hidden signs that you've already crossed that line. 3 signs that financially you could have retired by now and just haven't been told to look. I'm Justin Kuntz, certified financial planner and managing director at Pacific Wealth Management here in San Diego, and I help high net worth families retire early and pay a lot less in tax doing it. And what I see constantly is people who, with $2, $3, $4 million, are still grinding away, convinced that they're just a few years short, when the truth is, they've passed that finish line a while back. And here's how you know. The first hidden sign is that your portfolio is now growing faster than you could ever really spend it. Say you've got $2.8 million invested and you spend about 140 grand a year. At a reasonable 6% return, that portfolio throws off approximately $168,000 a year in growth, right? That's more than you spend, which means that even if you never saved another dollar, even if you stopped working tomorrow, the portfolio is already funding your lifestyle and still growing on top of that. Now, here's what almost nobody does. They never really run that one calculation. They just feel behind because they're used to feeling behind. But the reality is, once your annual growth comfortably exceeds your annual spending, your job is no longer building your retirement. Your retirement is building itself. So you're just really along for the ride at that point, trading your time for a number that the market is already producing without you. Now, this comes with a caveat. Obviously, the market doesn't go in a straight line, and that 6% rate of return number that outpaces your spending probably isn't happening year over year. So it's good to use this number as an average. Look at the last couple of years worth of performance, and if that average outpaces your spending, then that first sign is probably active. A portfolio that out-earns you isn't the only thing that changes at this stage, because the longer you keep working, the more quietly you walk into that second sign. And this is one that actually starts costing you money. Sign 2, you're making your tax problem even worse. The second hidden sign is that you've entered the worst tax years of your life, and every extra year you work makes those taxes worse than they already are. See, when you're a high earner with a big pre-tax balance, you're sitting on a tax bill that hasn't even come due yet. All that money that's in your 401k plan and your IRA comes out as taxable income eventually, and at 73, required minimum distributions force it out whether you want it or not. So the bigger that balance grows, the bigger that forced income gets. So watch what happens when you work one more year. You stack another year of your highest earning income on top of an already large balance, and you keep contributing to that pre-tax pile, making that future RMD even bigger. And you burn one more year of the single most valuable tax window you'll ever really have, which are those low income years between retiring and turning on Social Security, when you could be converting that money to a Roth at low income tax rates. So here's the connection that most people really never see, and this is really the key insight. That one extra working year doesn't cause one problem, it causes 3 all at once. A bigger pre-tax balance means bigger RMDs later. Bigger RMDs push you into a higher tax bracket in your 70s, and that higher income then triggers IRMA, surcharges on your Medicare premiums, and makes more of your Social Security taxable, all at the same time. One decision, 3 downstream hits. And they don't show up until a decade later, unfortunately, when there's very little you can do about it. So if you're a high earner with a 7-figure pre-tax balance, working longer isn't necessarily reducing your risk. It's growing a tax liability and shrinking the only window you have to fix it. That's sign 2. And it leads straight into the third. The marginal year barely moves the plan. So the math is pretty straightforward, because it's not necessarily intuitive, though I'd like to explain it. When you've already got $2.8 million saved, saving another 60 or 70 grand in a year moves the needle about 2%. 2%, that's real marginal for just an extra year of work. And against that 2%, you're spending one of the healthiest, most active years of your life, one of the years you were saving all that money to actually enjoy. Now, I know you're probably thinking, but more is safer. More cushion never hurts. And look, to a point that's true, but past the point where your portfolio already out-earns your spending, more isn't necessarily buying you safety. It's just buying you a bigger number that you'll have to spend and a larger tax bill for your heirs to deal with. The cushion stopped being a cushion a while back. So when all three of these line up, your portfolio out-earns you, your tax situation is getting worse the longer you stay, and the marginal year barely moves the plan, that's not a sign you're almost ready. That's a sign you were ready, and the only thing keeping you at work is the habit of earning and going to work every day. But the question, again, goes back to, but isn't more better? Isn't more safer? I can hear the objection forming right now. Justin, that's fine when the market cooperates, but what if the market crashes a year after I retire? Isn't working longer a safe hedge against that? It's a fair question, and it's the one that keeps the most people working past that line. So here's the direct answer. The protection against an early downturn isn't another year of salary. It's structure. It's having a couple years of spending set aside in cash and a flexible budget so that when the market drops, you're pulling from cash instead of selling investments at the bottom. That's portfolio structure. Having different pieces of your allocation moving in different ways. So if the stock market takes a big hit, you have other assets that don't get hit as much or even maybe go up in value that you can use to continue to support your lifestyle while the stock market investments recover. This can be cash, this can be bonds, alternatives. There's all sorts of different diversifiers out there. But ultimately, it's about having multiple things doing different things within the portfolio, and that diversification brings structure to this whole strategy. A household whose portfolio already out-earns its spending has an enormous amount of room to absorb a bad year and to simply spend a little less for 12 months if it wants to, right? That's real safety. Working one more year, on the other hand, doesn't actually protect you from crash. The crash can happen just as easily during that year as well. What it does do is it exposes one more year of your life to a risk that you've already engineered around. The safety you're looking for comes from how the plan is built, not from how long you stay at the desk. And that's the piece that people oftentimes get backwards. So here's what this plan really looks like in real life, and I'll make this a pretty concrete example. A couple, both 60 years old, no real backstory. They've got $2.8 million saved, about $2 million in pre-tax, $500K in a brokerage account, $300K in a Roth. He's a corporate executive, still pulling in high salary plus equity. They spend around 140 grand a year, and they're planning to work until 65 just to be safe. When we ran the numbers, all three signs were flashing. The portfolio was already producing more growth than they spent. 5 extra working years would have added roughly $500,000 to the pre-tax balance, which meant materially larger RMDs at a higher tax bracket when they're in their 70s, and IRMA surcharges layered on top of that. And the marginal benefit of those 5 years after tax was a rounding error against the $2.8 million plan. So what actually helped them wasn't working longer, it was retiring at 60 and using those low income years to convert pre-tax money to a Roth at a 22% rate before Social Security and RMDs ever turned on. They left work 5 years earlier and lowered their lifetime tax bill at the same time. That's the move conventional thinking completely misses. So if this sounds like you, this isn't a one-size-fits-all option. If you genuinely love your work, keep doing it. That's a great reason to stay, and it has nothing to do with your money. And if your portfolio doesn't out-earn your spending, then you're not at this point. You should keep building. This is specifically for the high earner who's financially past the finish line and is still running. If you watch these 3 signs and quietly recognize your own situation, if you've got the assets, you've got the tax problem brewing, and you're still working mostly out of fear, that's exactly the kind of thing we can help with and help untangle at Pacific Wealth Management. As a fiduciary firm, we're legally required to put your interests first, and a first conversation is just that, a conversation. We'll show you where you actually stand with real numbers, whether or not you ever become a client. There's a link in the description below if you'd like to start. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.